Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. I am the chair, Councilor Tariq Lucas, Ward 2. With me in the meeting this evening is Councilor Randy Block, the Vice Chair, Ward 4, Councilor Julie Irish, Ward 5, Councilor Silver, Ward 8, and Councilor Sean Roach is on Zoom. Also with us this evening is the city's CFO, Maureen Lemieux, and the Chief, Timothy Cahoon, and our clerk is Danielle Delaney. Please note this meeting is being both audio and video recorded. And let's begin. The first item, we're going to take up the first two items together, read them into the record. Item 21426, transfer of $1,175,000 to the Newton Police Department for contractual FY27 wage increases. And docket number 215-26, transfer of $710,000 for retroactive wage adjustments. So for these two items, we're going to start off with Maureen Lemieux, and then we'll turn it over to the chief for any comments, and then we'll bring it into the committee for discussion. Maureen, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I only want to make a very quick comment to begin with, and then obviously we will be happy to have whatever dialogue you would like. But I would just like to say on behalf of the mayor and the administration, we are very, very pleased to be bringing these two docket items before you tonight. As I think you all are aware, it has been 5 years since we were able to jointly settle and come to agreement with the Newton police officers, the police association. They represent, I believe it's 110 sworn positions. They are our rank and file patrol officers. They are the people who are out on the streets. And so again, as an administration, we are very happy that we are here, that we were able to reach agreement, and that we could really show the city's commitment and support and dedication to not only our police officers, but also to our new police chief, Chief Cahoon. And so this was a very a good process. We had good dialogue with them, as the chief will get into when he presents the operational aspects of this. We were able to reach agreement on establishing a committee that will define how we create a fit for duty process policy, which is incredibly important. And this also includes language that allows us to have much more latitude if we want to bring in lateral transfers. As you all know, we have certainly had a difficult time reaching our full complement of police officers. And so we have language that has to do with lateral transfers. Both of these items, we believe, will be very good for the members of this unit in both the performance of their duties and in their work-life balance. And so I don't want to take any more time than that. Obviously, I will be very happy to answer any questions you have after the chief presents, but I certainly wanted to make sure that you all understand that as an administration, we are very, very pleased to be able to bring this forward.
Go ahead, Chief.
Great. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Ms. Lemieux. We really appreciate the words and the sentiment from the mayor's office. I'll be brief as well, but I want to echo what Maureen was saying about the collaboration. I want to thank the NPA. The NPA came to the table wanting to reach an agreement as well. It was super important for us to get this done. The contracts show the value of our people, right? It's not all of it, but it's definitely some of it. And it's important to get those done. This contract reaches back to FY20, I think it's 24 to FY27. So they've been without a contract for a significant period of time. So to get that done was excellent. I also want to mention the parking control officer's contract was also settled a little bit late in the game. And my understanding is all contracts across the city are not done. I'm not positive on that, but I believe that's the case. I know everything in our building is, which is tremendously helpful. The process was robust, and it was extremely professional and efficient. I want to thank the mayor's office. The legal representation we had was second to none. And we just had it was a good team to put this together. Both items relate to contractual obligations, whether it was retroactive obligations related to the COLA raises or what we'll be responsible for in FY27. And as Ms. Lemieux mentioned, the Fit for Duty Committee, again, part of our wellness, initiative to make sure that we have a delineated process if we were going to subject somebody to a fitness for duty examination. And the way that, in my opinion, the committee will establish buy-in on all sides for that, which is tremendously important. And then one new article that we're going to be incorporating into the contract is prior service credit for lateral transfers, which we've talked about it a lot in this committee and others, that it's a different market out there, employment market for police. And we're simply mirroring what a lot of other communities are doing, meaning if you worked 10 years in a different municipality and you come here, we'll give you credit for that as it relates to wages and vacation. It's going to, in my opinion, help make this job more marketable for folks if we're going to try to bring other people in. And it will also be prior service crediting for new hires. So the idea is to make this police job more attractive to candidates from around this city and beyond. And as you know, we have some vacancies to fill, so that will be tremendously helpful. But I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And obviously, I have our CFO that will help with any of the nitty-gritty finance questions too.
Okay, thank you. It's questions from committee members or comments. I should also note that we've been joined by Councillor Brian Golden, Ward 7 on Zoom. Hello, sir. Any comments from committee members? Councillor Block.
I have a question about the retroactivity application. What about police officers who've left the force during the past time when they weren't under contract? Are they eligible for the portion of the time that they were serving, or are they not eligible for any payments?
My understanding is yes, if they were part of the bargaining unit, they're eligible, but I'm going to turn that to the financial wizard, and I think she can clarify in case I'm misspeaking.
Thank you, Councillor and Chief. You are absolutely correct. Anyone who was part of the bargaining unit for any time within the years that are covered by this contract, up through any date of retirement or resignation, they are eligible. They will receive whatever they would have been due back then.
Thank you for that clarification. This is a little outside the scope of what's in front of us now, but is that the city's practice for all bargaining units, or it varies depending on the circumstance?
It is the practice of all bargaining units. It may be, I don't know if there's a state law behind it or DLR decisions, to be honest, but it is certainly something that we have always done.
Okay, thank you. I agree with that policy, so I'm glad that that's what we're following. I was never sure about it. Thank you. Thank you both.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a quick question. I know there are 2 police unions. Does this new collective bargaining agreement for both of them, or just one of them?
Just one. The NPSOA was settled prior to the budget preparation for FY27, so that was already spoken.
All right. So there's just
the Newton Police Association.
Okay.
Yeah, patrol officers.
Okay, sure. All right. Any other questions? Oh, Councilor Silver.
Yeah, I'm wondering where are you anticipating the sources of funding are? Was this anticipated as a cost? Is this I mean, I assume it was anticipated to some extent, but is this, a free cash type of thing, or were there money allocations made for this?
Thank you. It's a great question. And so when we have contracts that are where we are 1 or 2 or 3 years into, the term of the contract, we set aside within our wage reserve account for each year when we have contracts that are not settled. We calculate what our anticipated salaries would be, show up in our current year wage reserve. For any years that are retroactive, what we do is we then carry that money forward each year. And so that's why you have two different items in front of you. So the 700,000 actually includes 3 bargaining units. It's the retroactive portion for 3 bargaining units. And so it's actually the engineers from DPW, the parking control officers, and crossing guards in police, as well as the NPA in police. All of that money doesn't show up in the fiscal 27 budget because it's all money that we have had budgeted in 25 and 26, and we've carried forward so that we would have it for the retroactive payment. The part that shows up in the 27 budget, if you actually went back and looked in the comptroller's office, you would see that we had that $1,175,000 in the, I believe it's $1,175,000 in the comptroller's budget as the current year wage reserve. When we have contracts that are, 2 or 3 years in, it's not rocket science, but it's very complicated. And so by the time we are budgeting for the current year wage reserve, we need to have enough money that actually takes their raises in for 25, which was 3%, for 26, which is another 3%, when compounded ends up being to be, I think Councilor Block would appreciate this, would be 6.09%. And by the time you get to 27, it's I forget now if it's 9.18 or what it is. And so it compounds. And so what we have for 27 represents the compounding of 3 years worth of wages.
Thank you.
And all of that has been planned.
That's nice.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right. Does anyone want to make a motion?
To approve, or are we doing?
Separate votes. We're gonna do 2 votes.
Okay,
So,
well, do the first one.
okay. Councilor Block has made a motion to approve 214-26. His Honor the Mayor requesting to transfer $1,175,000 to the Newton Police Department for contractual FY27 wage increases. Any further conversation, questions? No? We'll try this on a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, 6-0. Support that. And Councilor Block,
Would you like another motion?
Yes,
This
please.
item. So moved.
item 215-26 is Honor the Mayor requesting to transfer $710,000 for retroactive wage adjustments. Further discussion, comments? Seeing none, let's try this on a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Councilor Golden, is that an aye?
Yes, and aye.
All right, that vote is 6-0. They will go to the full council on July 13th for approval.
No, we have to go to the finance committee first.
It will go to the finance committee first, and then it will go to the full council. Hopefully, we can vote it out on July 13th. Thank you very much, Ms. Lemieux and Chief Cahoon. We are all set.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much.
Have a good evening.
You as well.
You too.
All right.
Question, Counselor Lucas.
Yes.
Does the 6-0 include Counselor Golden and me? I
Yes.
can't tell who's, okay, good. All right, thanks.
I got you, Councilor Roach. Don't worry.
Nay.
Okay. We're almost done for the evening. We have one more item. Item 62-26. Councilors Lucas, Block, Gilbert, Kalis, Irish, Farrell, Princeman, White, and Charm requesting a discussion and ordinance change to the city's overnight parking ban. We have a special guest this evening. former counselor Chris Markowitz, Chair of the Overnight Parking Ban Working Group. Come us and then join us at the table, please. You're back in the hot seat. Yeah.
Not quite.
No pressure. All right. So for this, we are going to turn it over to Mr. Markowitz, who's going to give us an update on what the working group has been working on. And then we will take it into questions and comments from committee members, and we'll see how this is going to go. Okay.
Okay.
So, Councilor Markowitz, everyone has the backup materials. I know Ms. Delaney can put it up on the big screen for those watching at home. So whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. So first of all, thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. Meet some new counselors, Counselor Silver, Counselor Golden, who I can't see right now, and Counselor Roach, who I do know from previous life. So happy to be here. I'd like to start off by introducing just the members of the group that have worked on this so far. So I'm going to start with the people who are in the room. We've got Mr. Rich Heald. We have Mr. Howard Rosenoff. We have Mr. Peter Claes.
Mhm.
And then on the video, I think I saw Miss Fairley.
Yeah.
And I think I saw Mr. Halley.
Yeah.
See
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and there's me, so that's how many, did I get everybody? Who we missing?
Yeah.
We're missing Mitch, we're missing Mitch, we're missing
Yeah.
Mr. Fishman, who's probably, they don't have traffic council tonight, so
No.
he's probably off in some other city eventually.
Or he's at the Red Sox game or watching the Red Sox.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
I'm a Guardians fan, so I'm sympathetic, but it's not my problem.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to cover, what we would like to cover tonight, and we appreciate, this is an update. We're not trying to have an ongoing discussion, although if you want to ask us questions about things, certainly feel free, and I've got support here and all these folks.
Hold on a second.
You go on, Chris.
Okay, hold on a second, Chris. Danielle, can you go back to page 1, please?
Yeah, it's all the way up.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay,
There
go
it goes,
ahead.
update. So we introduced the numbers, and I want to say that it has been, it's been a good process so far. We've been able to engage each other. I think we come from, it's interesting to look at the composition of this group, because I think we have a variety of perspectives to offer on this, from a pure standpoint of, how we actually personally voted in the last November election. Well, we didn't poll on that. I can tell you that we had people on both sides of the question, and the reasons for doing that. And we looked at I think it was the April 8th meeting. It's interesting to see the diversity of perspectives that feed into kind of who supports keeping the ban, who wanted to eliminate the ban, and the people who are kind of in between, which is sort of where we are with this. So tonight I've introduced the members. We're going to tell you about where we are right now. We'll talk about scope and some of the work that we have completed so far. We're going to talk about the process, how we actually been going about doing this. We're going to get into the weeds a little bit and talk about the location of the trial waiver. And those are the terms we're using right now, trial waiver. We're not calling it pilot. We're not calling it anything else. Terminology has actually been a bit of a chunk of work on this for us. It's been a bit of a
No, we'll get a call for us. So
just when you start using words like hardship and so forth, it's like, well, what does that really mean? So we've had discussions on that, and I think some of that will still evolve before we give you our what will eventually be the final deliverable. And then we've got some questions for you, little guidance for us as we go forward. You may not be able to answer them all completely, and you probably may have some questions for us as far as how we're going through this. But again, this is a status report. It's not a final report. This is really, and I'm going to talk about timeline at the end, but this really is work in process. So what you're going to get from us is not a finished, written bound, report. You know, and actually, I don't know right now if it's gonna be a PowerPoint, matrix document, or a Word count. We're kind of working through that. We want to make sure we do substance, not necessarily glyphs. But this is work in process. You are going to have, if you choose to go forward with this, you're going to have a lot of work to do. And you'll see why when we get into this. This says we've spent, I think we've had 4 meetings so far, and we've spent about 10 hours on this. In total, 10 to 11 hours. So the meetings have been running, 2 to 2.5 hours. We have some logistics issues. We don't have someone as wonderful as Danielle supporting us. We have to do it ourselves. And that has, burned a few minutes here and there. The fee that hasn't made, we spent about 10, 11 hours on this so far. In addition to that, a number of group members have done research. We have research from the Yes campaign. We have data from there. Mr. Halley has invoked Claude to do some things for us, and we'll talk about that. And we continue. We've all looked at the TPRs. So in addition to the meeting time, we are spending time educating ourselves. And these are all things that I think you're going to have to do as you take this thing forward. So this is not going to, I hate to keep saying this, but I don't think this is going to be a light lift going forward. It's based on what we have done so far. Dr. Yeah, we're on agreement. Okay.
Bunch of yes men. Yeah.
I assure you, while we haven't had any controversy, everybody has spoken their mind, and that's a good point. Actually, maybe I'll leave it in for later part of the session, but you're not going to see a vote. I don't think you're going to see a vote here. You're not going to say we voted 5-2 on this or 4-3 on that. What I committed as chair to the group is that I would make sure the report reflected the collective opinion. So you'll see both sides of it. I think what you're probably going to see is here's the, we're calling these things topics. For example, disability is a topic. So you're going to see that what we've learned, what our recommendation might be, what our finding might be, whatever we want to call that word, and then probably the pluses and the minuses, and as much implementation guidance as we can give you. And again, I said before, there's work to do here. The devil is definitely in the detail of implementation. I have tried as chair to pull the group back from talking about implementation, but it's hard to do that because everything you talk about. So what if we did this, or what about this? When I go back to your April 8th meeting, your almost entire meeting focused on all the challenges you would face in doing this. Well, the good news is we actually covered most of that stuff. Now, have we solved it? Not necessarily. But we've had the same level of thinking. We've gone through all these things, so that's going to be very important. So I'll get into the meat. Let's go to the next slide here. So this is backgrounds and assumptions. So there's some basic. Just one slide down, Danielle. Thank you. And I apologize for the font size and stuff like that. I just didn't really, I used to be a management consultant. I know people used to go wild over, fonts and all that kind of stuff. But this is typing. First of all, very important to understand, Newton voted to retain the winter parking ban in November 2025. We are not suggesting to flip the ban, nor have we been charged to flip the ban, okay? In fact, I'm going to put it back to you. You didn't charge to us. We don't really know. We haven't really decided yet whether or not we would even recommend a trial, all right? The way we're viewing this is if you did do a trial, this is how you might go about doing it. So these are the topics that you might choose to include within the scope of your work and the types of things that you're going to have to consider. So that's what you're getting right now. You got a problem. I shouldn't say you got a problem. If you have issues with that, now is the time to say something, and then we'll tell you what the bill for that will be. And I mean the bill just in terms, I know you would like to have this, we know you would like to have this report in time for a vote, I think on July 8th. Something like, I think it's July 8th.
What's July 8th?
That's the date that you want to have a final report on this, or final.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's important for us because
yeah.
So you're all counselors. The reason I got out of the council business, I got tired of getting up 90 nights a year to do this job. But we have met every week, and we continue to meet every week. And that is in itself a challenge, trying to get 7 people on the same night, and when we can find a room in City Hall and all that. But again, Newton decided to retain the parking ban. This committee is charged with identifying and recommending whether specific accommodations, call them trial waivers, be made for exemptions for the overnight parking ban. For example, disabilities. I'm going to say the H word, even though it's a problematic word, and something we're calling, for lack of a better term right now, general need.
So just for to be clear, the H word is hardships.
Yes.
Okay.
It is hardship.
To be clear.
Well, if you start really digging into, I'm sure you all, being members of PSNT, at least skimmed the 257 pages of the TPR.
Oh, of course.
Right? You read about all those
Yeah.
60 pages of
Yeah.
stop signs, and every stop sign that's ever been contested in the city is in that thing.
Maybe for the public, you should translate PPR.
It's the traffic parking regulations. Okay, thank you. But I assume you all
It
know
took me a
that.
while to know what that.
Yeah.
That's the.
Do you know what the DRT is? During land use, it's very important.
Yes, 9, but I won't tell you.
Anyway, you could go on. Now, as I said before, while consensus is desired, the report is going to present full disclosure. So we're going to tell you what we talked about, the pros and cons, as best we know them. This last point is very important. We're not developing an implementation plan. So, and we'll talk about what that is, but I probably come back to this again and repeat it, apologize for doing this. But if you think about doing something, building something, implementing something, you've got, this is basic IT stuff. You design something, you build it, you test it, you implement it, you stabilize, right? We're in design. We're at the front of this. We're going to give you a package of information that you are going to have to continue designing and filling in details, and you're going to vote on it probably several times. You're going to vote on something, whatever you decide to take forward. That is still design. After that, maybe contemporaneous, maybe you can have these tasks overlapping. You're going to have to figure out how to implement these things. You're going to have to talk about possibly legal changes to ordinance involving the lawyers. You're going to have to certainly go back to the police and go through what's being proposed, because that's operating procedure today. We may talk a little bit about that. You're going to have to think about communication, possibly even training some people on how to enforce this, how to deal with it in certain areas, depending how complicated it gets here. All of those things take time. That's a duration. So when you're backing up, hopefully for a December, if you want to actually implement something at the start of this, when the ban effectively goes into place December 1st, you've got a lot of work to do in between the approval process and the actual implementation. You may have a lot of work to do. Somebody has a lot of work to do. And you're going to have to factor it into your timeline. I'm kind of running ahead here a little bit, but since we're on the topic, you may even, if you decide to do something, want to phase something, depending on what exactly is ultimately done here. Okay, so that's the warning on time. It's important. I'm looking over at my folks here just to make sure no one disagrees with that, right? We're all cool. It looks like a fair amount of work. All right, let's go into the process now. Thank you, that's fine. So data, a lot of data. And this is no particular order. It certainly is not chronological in terms of how we arrived at this. As I said, Mr. Halley was able to beat up Claude and generate heat maps for us. And these are very important things when you start thinking about things like, what is the actual need here? What problem are we trying to solve? So we've done heat maps that have done things like talk about how far do residents live from municipal parking lots where they could potentially park overnight. The answer to that, by the way, without tipping too many cars, is most of them don't live within any appreciably decent walking distance, which is in our case 15, 20 minutes even. So the vast majority of the city is outside that. There are some areas that are well within it, but many are not. They may not necessarily have parking need, but they are outside that. We've looked at density, housing units. We've looked at cars related to density. So we have heat maps on all these types of things. How many cars do you think there are in the city?
Well, yes, 33,000 households. I would guess 68,000 cars.
Just under 60,000. Per late, yeah, who knows? I mean, it's the trend, by the way, is down. The trend is down. 58,000 cars and change. The rough guess from Claude was around 60,000. So it shows that the AI is actually, these heat maps are valuable. They can be further developed, they can be further beat up, but they are important data. We looked at, I don't know if Howard did this or Rich did this, but one of them, maybe Rich, a couple of people, what are other, maybe it was Rich, started working on what other municipalities are doing, both legally and also from the standpoint of, do they enforce an overnight parking ban? And that's important when we talk about potential challenges you're gonna, areas that you wouldn't want to try to say. I'll call it that for now. So we looked at that. We looked at the TPR. We looked at the municipal lot inventories. We even looked at parking tickets. So the Yes campaign, she had data on parking tickets. You know how many parks, was it last year we had 24, 25? 24, 25. If we don't have 25, 26. How many parking tickets do you think were issued for the overnight park, for just strictly an overnight parking ban violation in the winter of 24 to 25? This is wrong.
25.
1,000.
I was gonna say 1,500.
1,500? That's not a bad guess. The actual number is 3,000. It's over 3,000.
Wow.
The year before, and we don't know why. As far as I know, we don't know why. Maybe we'll figure it out. We had about half that. Okay. We also kind of understood that while it's not a de facto quota system, if people show up without writing tickets, they're kind of questioning, like, what did you do? It's interesting when you look at the tickets themselves too. You'll see they're clustered. Like one street gets hammered, like 7 or 8. I don't know if they had a party and everybody got to whatever and couldn't go home and stayed over, or it just so happened that was a night that area was forced. Don't know that.
It's complaint driven.
It is like most things in the city. It's complaint. Right.
So that makes a lot of sense.
But there could be other reasons. But anyway, 3,000 tickets. So that's about 75,000 of revenue drop in the bucket. But $75,000 is $75,000. Who have we talked to? We've had Chief. We had Captain Devine in. He spent an evening with us, which is very generous of him. And we're probably not done with him because I think a lot of these things have to get run back with him. I have talked to Jonah Temple about this just to go through some basic legal stuff and kind of understand what we might be up against there. We've talked to David Kozes. We still have more work to do with David to kind of get some impression from him. We've even talked to Ned Cox. There's other people we have not reached yet, and we probably will have to. Some of this has been done outside of the committee, the group, excuse me, it's a group, not a committee. We've done this outside the group, but we just have to keep collecting data. All right, so these are folks who deal with this stuff every day, and they will be part of the implementation process if you do decide to go forward with this. Okay. Any questions on data? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question on the 58,000. So that's 58,000 as measured by excise tax?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's excise tax.
So there could be more cars, potentially people who may not have their home address here, but the vehicle ends up here at some numbers of times.
Could have people.
People in Montana living in liability corporations.
Probably lots of those these days.
Could be. There's a related concept to that. We start thinking about this is like how many cars would tolerate, how many cars would actually happen, how bad would that be? So we don't know that stuff. That would be, I think, something you might learn in the trial. You might have to extrapolate it, but it was something you would learn in the trial. So that's basically the data we use in the process. And
just a question on, I guess, the granularity of this, and whether you've thought about trying to develop a database of individual residences that don't have off-street parking, that don't have any off-street parking. I understand the heat island analysis will give you a sense of which neighborhoods this is sort of more likely to appear in, but that's different than actually having an address.
some of that, I think to a certain extent, couple of the heat maps do tend to do that. Can I, Chair, can I ask someone on the phone to answer that question, help answer that question?
You mean on the Zoom?
It would be Mike.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Mike, are you on?
He has his hand raised.
Mike, can you add some commentary to the question that Councilor Block just asked?
Thank you, Councilor Block. Yes, so I was able to access the Newton Assessors database, which has lots of, basically, I believe it's the full accounting of information that we have at the public level about things like garages, carports. So we can make an estimate for houses, obviously number of units, number of bedrooms, and that's what I used to compile sort of an educated density map. So this is the need side, which was say, hey, if you have a house with one bedroom, there's a limit to how many cars you would have there. But if you had 3 or 4, then that is on the need side. And we could say, given garages of a certain size, how many cars could fit in that, and carports. However, the assessor's database does not list driveways. So as far as I know, talking to Doug Greenfield and GIS, we don't have a public assessing of slots that would exist. So it would actually involve a survey to figure out that. But I think we have a reasonable idea up to that point, how many spaces. But we also know that people who are particularly desperate about this will use their front yards to park. So, and those in some ways are the ones that are it's one class of problematic when we're filling up our front yards with motor vehicles in the winter. So, so we don't have that number, and I'm not aware of where we can find it, other than doing a special purpose survey for it, which I think would be quite difficult. I think even aerial, something as exotic as the LiDAR data that we have doesn't pull out that information. So if it's available, be happy to make a map of it.
Thank you for that. Bring it back to us. What it does do for us is it does give us a relative sense, and I think that's our first generation. If we're going to talk about this thing called need, and that's something that you're going to have to define maybe even more sharply than we can, or decide if you want to proceed with this thing called need. But on a relative basis, you can see kind of where those concentrations are. So it's useful even for that, because most of you, I think, know enough of the city to not be surprised by some of this. But it should help kind of solidify your understanding, support your understanding. The next slide is just a cut and paste of some of the maps we have. So there you see our fair city.
Mike, did you do a heat map of the ticket locations?
No.
No.
Is that something you could do?
Why can't you unmute?
You can if you want. So choose the answer.
Just say yes or no. You think we can do it? I don't think we can. But think you can do it? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Chris, I think.
He's on.
Councilor Roach, we can give it to you by streets, but they write very few of the tickets by specific locations. So when streets like Palm come up with the leading, 7% of the tickets in 2025, and well,
we're working a problem. I want to be careful that we say we wouldn't get into. Sorry, I don't mean to be a comment. I'm just trying to. Yeah. But that came to us on an Excel spreadsheet, right? So there is a data format that could be fed into something to do it. So maybe that's something to look at if it's as of interest. I think we can probably do that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. With God, all things are possible, right? You have.
I have that to a certain extent.
Okay. All right. Well, we should jot that down.
We've looked at the.
Did you say God?
I said God.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure. But
Whether or not you believe or not,
Yeah.
I just throwing it out there. So I apologize for doing that. I am in a public forum, and I always voted against that stuff, that mixed church and state. That was just me.
Did you vote for the steeple?
Let's not get into that. No, parking.
You were gonna ask that too.
Oh, yeah, he tempted me.
Parking ban. Go ahead.
Parking ban. Back to the parking ban. Okay. Is that the next slide?
That's the next slide.
Okay, so we looked at inventory of what's available for parking today. Because obviously you all know that you can park in a municipal lot with a permit overnight. Okay, you got to get out of there if they're plowing, if there's snow and stuff like that. It's not a panacea, but it is available to you. Those parking lots, by the way, there's only one or two that are heavily utilized. They both tend to be down in an Onantum area. Most of the rest of the city has a very light use of those overnight parking facilities, probably in the area of anywhere from 15 to say 30%, if I'm remembering my numbers correctly. So there's opportunity there. But again, without running too far into the details, if you go back to this thing called need or shortage of supply or whatever, it's fine that they have it, but that's not an area where you have a lot of dense, you have a lot, mostly single families, things like that.
It's a bunch of the parking lots, and it's mostly single family.
Yeah. So. But in addition to that, we did look at the possibility of our parks. Okay, now there are issues with implementing this, and of course you've got now Parks and Rec involved in this. You're bringing other people into this. Those schools Not necessarily all school parking lots or the entire school parking lot. You got a big school parking lot. What if you took 20, 30 spaces out of that? This is all stuff to consider because this is possible. This could help address the solution without ever having to consider going to the street. Okay. The Ed Center, enormous parking lot, in an area, of reasonable density, not exactly in the middle of it, but proximate to it. And then the library. All right. So you've got, and there's probably other things out there. We did briefly discuss the commercial lot rental as a possibility. My experience on this, I don't know if anybody else was around when we did this. We looked at, I think Mike might have some knowledge of this too. Some time ago, we looked in West Newton Square about using facilities there, the church there, what was Santander at the time when Core owned it. I don't know if he still owns it or not. I think he does. But we looked at a garage that's on Chestnut. So we looked at all those things. And the answer we got back at the time, the council received back at the time, was the parties who owned it weren't interested in it, primarily because of liability issues. Their insurance coverage would be affected by the city, using these spaces for basically parking for West Newton Square at night, the restaurants, the movie theater, stuff like that. So again, we've turned over those types of things. There may be other things out there we haven't identified yet, but something to consider. Okay, we can have the next slide, I guess. All right, now, this will take a few minutes, but these are areas that we are not actively thinking, if you did a waiver, would be good places to do a waiver for different reasons. And I'm just going to run through the list. Some of them you understand very well, some might be a little new. First of all, areas within a college campus.
Yeah.
I believe that, fighting against parking in nearby college campuses was actually the genesis of some people's political careers. Wink, wink. Not mine, but others. And this is, something you wouldn't want to override. You leave whatever arrangements had been, and I personally been involved in some of those things in my own ward back when I was a counselor. Large housing complexes. This is going to get more attention from you. There are a number of big proposals that are probably, we'll get approved at some level, I think. I'm thinking like Craft Street, we've got a ton of units coming on board there. You've got units almost down Washington Street, and you've got more. So really any housing complex over 24 units probably should provide enough parking that it doesn't need to use the streets, nor would you want to, I think, actively encourage a developer to think that they could get around parking minimums by taking advantage of the street. Now, that hasn't happened yet, but you need to factor that in. Okay, because you can very quickly fill up, some very tight areas. Village overlay districts. This is not the only version of this, but the reason village overlay districts is on there is that by design, they have no parking minimum, and they are by design, therefore, really designed to be car free or car light. So any area, any housing development that is, does not want to build parking spaces, those areas, and typically it's driven by zoning, but those areas would be exempted from consideration because you've already said this is an area where we don't have cars. It's just logic. You can change that, go against it, but that's the logic behind it. We have no attempt to override any existing parking restrictions. So whatever's in place today would stay during the trial, and that's mostly resident zones, time of day parking, duration of parking, those types of things. Areas that border abutting municipalities. So if they have an overnight, Brookline has an overnight parking ban. If you relax and you decide to open up some streets, you could have people from Brookline migrating across the line. You could, not saying they would, but again, it's something to think about. I already talked about the avoiding parking minimums in development, but this is really an issue for ZAP to consider too at some point. This is being careful not to do something that will encourage developers again to play loose and free with the parking minimums that we do have. Village centers, commercial areas, not sure about that one yet, but again, there are areas where from your other committee work probably that merchants want parking turnover. In Newton Center in particular, they want those cars to turn over because they need their customers to turn over. So encouraging overnight parking encourages a car, there's meters there that might chase them out, but it does encourage people to potentially leave that car there for longer periods of time, certainly in the evening, because I think we don't enforce meters after 6 o'clock. It's worth noting that the number of communities, even small suburbs, have it until 8 o'clock. So it's the complexity here. You start thinking about implementing these things. Would you want to ripple something back like that to change the meters? I'm getting into the weeds. I apologize, but just giving you a taste of the kind of stuff you run into. Bikeways, not all bikeways, but to the extent, Sean might know this, and I'm sure Councilor Roach might know this. At some point, there's going to be a good, solid plan for how you can get through Newton on a bike, and there's going to be major, I'll call them arterial bike routes. Leaving cars there extended periods of time inhibits the ability to use those facilities. So something else to think about.
I would think that those would simply be covered by existing parking restrictions.
They might be.
Yeah.
They might be. This is.
I appreciate it.
This is belt suspender stuff. Okay, it really is. But areas abutting municipal lots, I think that one might come out. I think we talked about that. We're thinking, all right, if you're going to do a municipal lot, we wouldn't automatically exclude those areas. There's a hold in there for the traffic engineer to discuss things, and we'll talk a little bit about traffic engineering in here at the end. Areas that have busy traffic will also be covered in that area. And then one of us brought up kind of one-way dead-end streets. Don't know. It's on the list right now.
How could you have a dead-end street that's one way?
One way or
It's like the Roach Motel. You can go.
Ouch.
Oh, I'm not taking that.
Yeah. The other one.
It's our AC, it's not our season. But you've seen that first one. We've all watched. We all watched it. Okay. Next slide.
Want to go back?
Does anybody have any questions? Oh, hold on, go back.
That is the next slide.
Do you want to? Can we flip back to that? So this is a pretty dense slide. Does
Okay, so
anybody?
one other thing here that I don't see is narrow streets.
We'll come to that. But yes, absolutely. That gets really difficult, right? Councilor Roach.
Everything you say is going to get difficult. I feel like it can't all be that difficult, can it?
Do you think this has been easy? I'm looking over. These are all very smart people, and Mike, Jenny, the comments have been insightful. So,
Thank you.
but any questions on kind of the concerns that we would have on areas that might not be good areas?
No, I agree in principle with.
Is there a consensus? I mean, is this just a list of things that
There's pretty
come
much
up,
consensus
or
on that.
you all sort of agree?
That list there's a fair amount of consensus on it. I'm not going to say it's 7 to nothing, but it's
Good.
yeah. And that's what the list came from the group.
Mhm.
And this isn't Chris's presentation. This is still the group. And I colored it a little bit. I still had to do the PowerPoint, so I apologize for that. Let's go to the next slide. This goes to some of Councilor Roach's questions here. So we have only had a nascent discussion. I had a nascent discussion with traffic engineering. More work needs to be done. The traffic engineer is on vacation this week, I think. But will more cars park longer without moving cause safety issues? And the first thing you think about is narrow street. What's a narrow street? 1 way, 2 way, 23 feet, 28 feet, those types of things. But that certainly is something we would pay attention to, obviously. Main arteries. So streets that could potentially even during peak hours could have traffic moving in 2 lanes in each direction. That can't actually happen in some Newton streets. Not a lot, but some of them. Would you want to have traffic? Would you want to have cars parked potentially overnight and into the next day? Not, back up just a little bit. Some of the thinking here is that because this could allow basically garaging on the street. There is no on-site garaging. The street's the garage, so the car is going to be there a lot. Maybe 24 hours at times or longer. Does that inhibit travel lanes on the busiest streets? So, Comm Ave, which Comm Ave's got a carriage way, so it's a little more challenging. Beacon Street, Adams Street, Lexington Street, streets that get heavy traffic, and you really want to maintain as much traffic flow as you can. Some of those intersections, I remember when I was in PS&T, they get several thousand cars an hour. And that's actually kind of the break point. When you start looking at the A, B, C, D, E, F rating for intersections, it's horrible. You can talk to your engineers about that. But some of these intersections get that kind of traffic. So, and there's the streets that feed into them. You know, it's basically clogging an artery. So what was insightful in talking to both parking and traffic, and I'm not going to quote them because some of this is me deducing what I heard from them, is that actually in back to implementation, there's a certain wariness, I would say, of the details that will have to be managed going into this. And I think this is from experience of having done things before and saying, what are the unintended consequences? Okay, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just going eyes open that there's a lot you need to think about that. You know, yeah, we will think about it, but when we hand it off to you, you can think through that as well, probably in more detail than we did, or that we've been able to by the time we give it to you. And that's kind of the implementation thing. Did that get enough towards the previous question? Yeah. Okay, did I apologize for doing this. Was there anything on that part that I missed? Looking over, getting hit nods. Mike looks like he's okay. I can't see Jenny. Okay.
It's okay.
Next slide, please, Danielle. Mr. Laney.
Last one, no.
No, it's right. Yeah, it's so funny. My first couple of months when I was a counselor, I was on PST and Jason was the chair. And when I learned that there were over 100 different sets of basic parking rules in the city, and I started looking at stuff, I said, man, this is pretty crazy. We should redo this. And he looked at me like I had two heads. He almost threw me out of the room. And I didn't know anything. I was 2 months in, and he just smoke coming out of his ears. And I believe, as an aside, that this group actually thinks that's not something that's totally out of bounds. You may come back from this and say, do we really need to relook at the whole thing? You know, huge amount of traffic going. Huge amount of traffic.
Separate docket item.
Yeah, it's not, you know, who knows who will be around when that comes up. So now we're starting to get into questions for you from the group. The first question is, why are we doing this? Not to be cagey or flip. Again, as we said, we're working on the assumption that you want to do a trial or you may want to do a trial. We haven't actually said go do a trial. Okay, and I know some of our group will say, yeah, we want to do a trial. Some may say we don't. But, you know, you didn't actually charge us to decide that. I read that memo a couple of times. I watched the video. So you have to decide, why are you really doing this? It would seem that beyond, you know, some very obvious things like, say, disability, this thing called hardship, which I'll tell you what we did talk about with respect to that. But if we're getting into why would we do this? The voters want to retain the ban. Are we looking to provide relief? And why are we doing that? You know, is there a need? So that becomes kind of the focus for our work. So I'd like you to affirm, you know.
Mayor? So I think and this was chewed up a lot of time in our discussions about this. One is the voters said we want to keep the ban narrowly. There are significant number of voters, and as numerous people have pointed out, more people voted on this item than in the mayoral race in 2025. We don't have exit polling. We don't have a survey of why, and so we have to use our best judgment. But I think the why are we doing this is to address what we configure is, or give our best guess is, the issue or issues that drove the significant, although ultimately unsuccessful, yes campaign. And that gets back into, you know, the goal isn't, the why is our goal, and the goal isn't simply to do something. The goal is to figure out something that will address the motivation of the yes side. So I would love to hear from this group what they think the goal should be, and whether it's disability, hardship, you know.
We worked through disability and hardship to a fair amount, and we have some recommendations kind of.
But before you get to the recommendations, did the group come to some consensus about this makes sense as the goal is to address those two needs?
Those two things, yes, generally, right, there's more work to be done on that, but generally speaking, yes, I will tell you that in the case of disability, there is fairly strong sentiment. There are some caveats on this, which we're sort of learning about, but the idea that someone who has to have access to a car that has to be proximate to their door and they do not have on-site parking would be something we would support. That's not in the ordinance right now, by the way. It is completely up to the police to decide to grant that privilege, if you will, that waiver, which in and of itself, there's reasons for that. There would be some that would argue that's somewhat arbitrary because now you're getting it case by case. There's also people that would argue, yes, but the reason the police are doing that is that they understand the safety situation in that particular area as well. So you kind of got that two things. But I would say the committee generally is favorable towards, and we use the term reasonable accommodation. I don't think that's the word we're using now. I think Jenny has suggested a better term. Off the top of my head, I'm forgetting what that is. But there is generally support for that. And once we got through that, the hardship, the type of hardships, there are things like, I have to go look it back up. There's things like you can call if you have a large party and you can actually ask for basically the ability to do that. That is rarely, if ever, granted. So we kind of got through that, which led us back, and we even talked about financial hardship a little bit, which again is something that we're sort of getting on the edge of what is the city's responsibility and how would you even deal with that. But we did turn it over. After we got through that, we're now into this thing that I'm calling right now general need, which goes back to, which would logically be a shortage of parking in certain areas of the city because there's a lot of housing units and there just is not a lot of on-site parking. That would be primarily the reason. To go back to Councilor Roach's question, we did ask the Yes campaign for the reasons why they think people voted for. And I don't think you did exit polls, but maybe you did some. A couple of reasons that come up, classic stuff, and these are examples. So family has kids grow up, kids go to college, kids come home from college, kids have cars. All of a sudden, that 2-car driveway, 2-car garage, they need 4 cars now. We have probably all know situations like that. So the need for intergenerational families. So grandma, son, daughter, granddaughter, all living in the same thing, they all drive. To preserve the integrity of that, they need more car space because now you've got 3 households within a confined. Those are the types of reasons. You might call that convenience. You might call that, maybe some people think it is a social obligation, but that's the nature of what we're talking about here, which is why this is a difficult question and why we say, why are we really doing this? If we're doing it because we believe that, to your point, and it's a good point, this was narrowly passed, right? And obviously there's a lot of people who either don't care or do care for those types of reasons. It's to be experimented on and see what's the net impact of this. If you did this, would it really cause a problem or not cause a problem? All right, so that's kind of the best answer I can give you right now. Like I say, this is the question that we are on right now. We're trying to work through that. And that's why we're using heat maps and stuff, because the solution for that then gets pretty complicated. Can be very complicated.
Well, it's also the impact of the offsetting goals, right? Because climate change.
Right. The people who,
the obvious one.
I remember this thing actually got you may know this, but I can't remember what year it was. I believe it was councilors Kelly and Albright who came to PST wanting to do a trial. And I think at that time they were focusing on one narrow part of the city. I think they were thinking parts of Newtonville and parts of West Newton, because those are Kelly and Susan both were, those were parts of their wards. And I think Jake might have still been on the council at that point. And we looked at, doing a trial that didn't go anywhere. I don't know if they even got it out of committee. I can't remember. I think we voted to hold it in committee and it just sort of, fell off the end of the term. How often it didn't come back. But there was a thinking about doing this once before, and it didn't get a lot of traction. And I'm trying to remember now why I started going down that path.
Because I asked you.
Yeah, but there was more to your question, I think, than that. All right, we'll come back. Will the tribal implementation have unintended consequences? We touched on some of that. So that the best person to talk to about that, really, the parking clerk, and I'm calling him a parking clerk. He's really director of transportation.
David?
Yeah, David, I think.
Parking coordinator.
Parking coordinator.
Transportation coordinator.
Transportation coordinator.
David Rosen?
Yep. And Dr. Devine, which is kind of, having been through other implementation, how do they see this? Even though they would probably want to be careful how they answer these things, they know a lot. And again, they've got hard experience doing this stuff. Sample size. Okay, so this is about, in your minds, do you think this is something that we would do kind of like the way the proposal that, Susan and Andrea had back in the day, which is, let's just do a couple parts of the city, see how it goes? Or are you thinking this is something we should try in all 8 wards? Any initial reaction to that? Big or small?
Small.
Well, if you're, I reserve the right to change my mind, of course.
We're not voting.
No one's listening.
We do a roll call.
I'm not opposed to trying different parts of the city, but I need to be careful what parts of the city we would, quote unquote, open up the streets, but
reading facial expressions here just to see how the group is. It's a good question. I mean, we haven't decided that. We've been on both sides, but I'll tell you, on one side, the bigger sample gives you more information, right? A smaller sample gives you less information. So just the statisticians in the house here may have a perspective on that. There are downsides to big samples. It's more to implement, more to work on, and God forbid, if you decide to do this and people like it, you decide to flip it back. Then you got to take. I always told people, taking stuff away after you give it to them is very hard. And all, as you, God help me for saying this, you're all politicians. You have to think about that kind of stuff. It's like, what are your constituents? You are representatives. You're not statespersons. So you got to think about how that stuff plays out. Something that we would, again, this would help us back to the question that Councilor Roach had a little bit earlier. Thoughts on metrics, support actions to be taken after the waiver trial is concluded. But how would you measure success? How do you know this thing actually? So we go do it. We do the recommendation. We maybe somehow record all the tickets that could have been written that weren't written. I don't know. There's got to be some
tickets, complaints from abutters, complaints from neighbors. But of course, someone could complain to the wrong person and then not get to us.
But you're going to need, back to this implementation thing, you're going to need a mechanism to collect data. Otherwise, you won't know anything. You'll have done this and say, okay, we did it. What did we learn? I don't know. Something to think about.
Yeah.
And again, that's an open question to you. I know we just threw it at you, but we would appreciate any time feedback. You might want to coordinate it through you or Councilor Lucas or Danielle. I'm not going to do this, but we certainly appreciate that. Now, a couple more questions for the councilors here. Would you be interested? We have a novel suggestion on top of this, which I didn't put in the slide, but I'm seeing Mr. Halley up there. He was one of the guys who authored this. But back to this, are councilors willing to suggest areas within their wards to try? If we said, come up and give us some streets or something like that, would you be willing to do that?
Yeah. And above and beyond that, I think, sorry. There you go.
No, I was saying, yeah. No, I was just saying.
That was a yes, I think, yeah.
Okay, so if you choose not to elaborate beyond yes, I will go then.
Yeah.
Thinking about the sample size, right? One of the benefits of a small sample size is you can more comprehensively do outreach to the neighborhood or neighborhoods, and then more comprehensively survey them afterwards, right? So if we think about, relatively small group, send a leaflet, show up for a community meeting before, after, that would be that would be a benefit.
You might all, I'm thinking out loud here. But if you did something like that, you might all then have another job to do, like you prep for your meetings. You may have to actively try to monitor that, or some way be able to help collect that data, assess the opinion. The novel word off this was a suggestion that rather than us or you or anybody saying where these trials could be, was to go to the community itself. Now, today, when you want something changed in your street or whatever, you want to get a certain type of parking space, you want to do this, you want to put a stop sign in, whatever, you write a petition to the traffic council. You can do the same thing in theory with this. You could petition to say, we want to trial this area. Now, you'd have to go out and get 10 signatures and get one of you to do it. There would be definitely some debate, I think, going on. If somebody want to do a trial, people on the street say, wait, so you'd have to navigate through all those conversations. But that's a possibility too. And there's other stuff like that, just other ways to go about figuring out where exactly to pinpoint this. We now are looking at what I'll call need. So I don't want to call it a parking shortage or anything else, just call it need. And say, look, these are things that, areas that potentially could benefit from more parking availability. You go to the municipality, go to the municipal owned lots first. After that, you're probably going to the streets. And if you go to the streets, how are you going to do that? Are you going to, open up the streets altogether? Are you going to try and do a permitting system? Now, we have taken kind of so far the tack that we're not advocating any kind of anything that puts a significant administrative burden on the city and particularly the police. So we probably would be unlikely to recommend anything. We would probably say if we did recommend that, just open up some streets and see what happens. But that means anything can happen, right? So just something else to think. This is a working process. We'll give probably a little sharper explanation of that. But this is the kind of stuff that we're kind of turning around.
I have a quick question. In the winter of 2021 and again 21-22, I believe the Mayor Fuller, for mayoral powers, executive powers, maybe through state laws because of the pandemic and all that stuff, to waive the overnight parking ban. Do we have any data on that, or that you know of, or like how many cars parked on streets? Of does anyone, I mean,
we're aware of it. We've discussed the fact that happened, but we haven't done it.
Okay, all right.
And that's not a difficult question to ask.
No, but it was 2 years. It was a 2 year, kind of like a 2 year trial.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is and it isn't. The thing you have to see, I'm speaking for myself a little bit on this one. Though the thing I've always thought about with this is that if you were to actually reverse the ban, just get rid of it. But even on a trial, there are people who will get cars and keep them here who don't have them today. I mean, you can't prove that 100%, but most people will tell you that you will have more cars in Newton if you do that. So I don't know if even knowing that this was a temporary thing, where that would incentivize someone to go ahead and procure a vehicle that thinking this is just going to go on, or I'm not going to worry about it type of thing. Don't know the answer.
Okay. All right.
But these are all, this is all stuff you'll turn around.
I like the push and pull.
Mm-hmm.
I like the push pull distinction. Instead of pushing it out, say, you come on in if you'd like, gather signatures.
It's an interesting idea. I don't know that it has, again, in the group unanimous support, but it's an idea, and I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do is give you somewhat, do some of the thinking for try to shape this down so that the next step you take, you've got a little more informed idea about what goes, look at the pros, the cons, the do's, the don'ts, the challenges you might face, the things that might be easy, and to enable you to go ahead. Because, I said this at the committee, I heard a couple times, PSD is going to beat this up and they're going to vote on it.
No,
and then it's going to go to the council. Maybe I imagine I should have chosen next. You're going to work on this.
Yes.
Okay. And you're certainly going to add to it, change it, whatever, right? Develop. It really needs to be developed. You're going to develop it further. This is likely to go to second call, it goes to full council. Right? So there's a lot of discussion to be had on this item. You're gonna have to work with.
One of the things that this makes me think of is that, obviously a lot of people are concerned about housing availability. And the absolute least expensive housing to build is the housing that already exists and is underoccupied. And so in a sense, we have a balance of building lots of new housing versus putting more people in the same housing. Which is kind of what you're talking about, from intergenerational households to returning college to, college graduates or college students.
Yeah.
Anyway, we know that houses have increased vastly in size in the last 20 or 30 years, but people have stayed relatively the same size.
Right.
We're talking about a total population.
No, the size of people.
Households.
Well,
But-
it didn't get so much bigger that we needed bigger.
Yeah. Isn't that-
People are learning.
Households actually.
Size of the
That's
group,
right.
yeah.
That's right. Absolutely.
Actual buildings.
That's
But the
right.
buildings are getting bigger.
Buildings are getting bigger, more bedrooms, less people.
You will see more large scale development, I think, until we exhaust the supply of land that's not built on yet, which is mostly parking lots. Parking lots are always, I remember the head of the cell was telling me every parking lot's a building site. I never forgot that, because he had a point. But once you exhaust that, then you're talking about, there's the whole is on the field here now. But I recall the zoning discussions we had beyond the village centers, talking about going into the residential zones. And now you're talking about rezoning and densing, what are now, say, SR2, SR3 type locations, that, you could add more housing. So, these are all things kind of looking down the road, saying, is this a need that grows later on? Is this a challenge we're going to have more of later on?
I would like to add that we have been joined by Councillor Pam Wright, who has raised her hand. Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just a couple minutes late. Are we talking about free fall parking for anyone in those areas, or are we talking about medical exemptions?
Or medical exemption.
Both.
Pardon?
We're talking about what the options are, which could include an area that is where the ban has been waived, and we're also talking about potentially exemptions for hardships.
Or disability, but that we Councilor, we sort of covered through that before. Today, the way you get I'm going to call it a disabled access space is you have to go through traffic council to get that, right? You petition for it, and that sort of tells you right from the get-go, you've got a space there. I think we have entertained making that a little broad, saying potentially if you had a placard that would enable you to park during the ban. That's actually a significant, doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's actually a significant step forward from where you are today. And it will be somewhat controversial, even though it's addressing what is an obviously, valid real need that I think most people would be sympathetic with.
Wait, can I continue on that? But what about
Mr. Wright, could you lower the volume just a little, please?
Okay, sorry. Yesterday I was not loud enough. So the thing is, if you just do with the placard, I thought we weren't going to allow people who are living in housing there's no parking or limited parking to be able to be parking on the street. Because there's a place going in West Newton with 27 units and 2 parking spaces. So even though they got a placard, they would be able to park on the street, even though that building is purposely not building enough parking.
I think the point, Council Wright, is that we are not having any discussion of solutions. This was just a discussion of what some of the thoughts were as possibilities, but we're not debating any one particular approach or another.
But I think Councilor Wright's comment is germane in that the unintended consequence,
It's an implementation.
the complication.
You have to
like-
think about it.
like-
and you have to answer that
As,
question.
as you said, you'd think people would be sympathetic.
Mhm.
You have a placard,
Mhm.
okay, fine, but Councilor Wright raises the
Yeah. Well,
circumstance
the other
in
thing with
which,
placard is in theory, it allows you to park anywhere in the city. Okay?
yes,
So you gotta think about that. Do you want to make the placard, nail it to a specific address, which would probably make sense. But again, Counselor Wright, that's, to Counselor Roach's point, we're not really trying to solve it, but those are the types of questions, I think, when you get into the weeds of this and actually trying to implement something, you're gonna have to, when you start to write a TPR or something, you're going to have to be at that level of specificity, which goes back to the thing.
Hold on for a second.
yes.
Counselor Wright, your hand is still up. Do you have any other comments?
No, not at this point.
Okay, thank you. I have just problem. So I was going to call you Counselor Markowitz. I can if I want. Do you still need the screen shared at all, or are you done with the presentation? You're done?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. If we need to show it again, we can. Danielle, can you stop? Okay, so we can just see it on Zoom.
Okay, good.
All right.
Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Counselor Block, go ahead.
Sure. The complexity that I think of is, and you referenced this, if you open up a street for overnight parking and you don't have a permit system, and anybody could park there, regardless of whether they have off-street parking or not. It just may be more convenient for them, or maybe it's maybe it's a need, like they got 4 cars, but only 2 spaces, but there's somebody else with, maybe you'd argue, a higher need.
Has no spaces.
They have no space.
Right.
And if we want to kind of prioritize things, which it feels like we do, that we would want the no space person to be taken care of first. And unless we do a permit system of some sort, I don't see how we can channel this this parking relief, to use that
Again,
term.
their Counselor Block is your trade.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Right. And there's other ways. I can even throw a nice little curveball at you. I don't like people parking in front of my house at night, so I just move my car onto the street just to do it.
Right.
Because I could.
Mhm.
So there are pitfalls. But again, this gets into the weeds of like, what are you really trying to do?
So yeah, I mean,
The permitting, there may be ways today, there's so much, chip-based sensing systems and so forth. There may be a way to do this. You're going to have to spend money to do that. You're going to have to implement it. And I really think you're going to have to get the buy-in of the police, because you don't have PCOs working at night, as far as I know, right? Unless you want to, recommend that we have nighttime PCOs. You did do that I think for leaf blowers. You actually had a leaf blower officer.
yeah, well, but it's during the day.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, right,
Yeah.
but it's the same idea. You
Yeah.
hire someone ad hoc just to deal with this. You could do that.
Yeah.
Probably enough money.
Yeah. I mean, the overnight parking ban as it stands right now is not perfect. And it's like our constitution to make it more perfect. If you could say. But to try to
For
improve
those
upon
who
it.
have actually read it.
Yes, for those who have actually read it. Although the overnight parking ban is only a sentence long. But
It's also buried. I think Mr. Halley found this. It's like buried under some other
it is.
ordinance
it
inside
is.
commercial parking.
Yeah.
It's like just stuck in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not perfect, but hopefully we can make it better and improve upon it with whatever we come up with at the end of this process.
The community council, do you generally support a trial? Do you think it's, again, for the reason of saying a lot of people voted for this, or the need is a need, and there's a certain amount of social equity here, or whatever, however you want to describe it. So how do you sort of lean today? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
I would, excuse me, I would support a small trial. That's just me.
Whatever,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm sorely conflicted on this because when you talk about unintended consequences, and it's not unintended consequences, they're inevitable consequences. And it's a very complex ecosystem. And I think we may be setting ourselves up for failure trying to narrowly describe some sort of solution with the expectation that it's going to allow this, but not allow this, and et cetera. And it's a very complex ecosystem. And if we're going to do it, we should be accepting of the fact that in a particular area or for a particular category of people, we're going to lift the ban. And we accept that that is going to be attended by lots of things we maybe didn't want, but the trade-off isn't. There's nothing surgical that we can do.
Maybe not. Yeah, you got to make an omelet. You got to break eggs, right? The old
Meaning,
bring up.
you don't think. I don't want to put words.
No.
You don't think that a narrow trial is either practical or a good idea or something.
I think a narrow trial by geography is fine. I think that would be interesting.
Okay.
But I think as I listen to this, I think that there's an expectation that there's something we can do and finely tune the levers and somehow allow the parking ban for this group of people and not that, or allow the waiver for this group of people and not that, allow the waiver for this area but not really that. And the fact is that this ecosystem is so complex, a small trial will learn something, but it is, you can't limit the scope of how the impact as finely as I think we're talking about. That's my point.
I mean,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Would it be more of an observation? We're sort of collecting data. We're not trying to control or change it. You're just, if you open it up, see what happens.
Let's see what happens on
See
the,
what happens,
let's see what happens.
and
on
look
the
at
street.
it, and then that's your data, because you're not
Yeah.
changing anything. Then you would never know whether it worked or not. If you start changing something, did that work? You just have to kind of let it go.
Yeah, I
Take
mean,
the data, it's an observation period, whether they call it a waiver or pilot, whatever, but it's sort of an observation.
I mean,
of changing it.
Yeah.
That's and knowing that it might be whatever that is, but you're just collecting data, you're seeing what happens. I think that's how you learn.
the data that we have from those heat maps, and I think it's the distance to walking to a municipal parking lot. I think that should be the starting point. Because
we covered that off.
The hardship would be there for relief.
Yeah, 'cause your first-
if you're 40 minutes, 50 minutes away from a municipal parking lot and you need some, not a lot, just some relief, that's where I would start. And then if the data we have from the locations of the tickets,
Well, you have-
that would be the other starting point of where I would
Let me
do.
try to list that a little
Yeah,
bit. So you can- so the way you probably do that, and I'm looking at the eyes here, can't really see the mic, but the way you probably do that is to sharpen it somewhat and say, we're going to try it in an area. We all would understanding there's risk involved. This thing, you could have some real issues. And to your point, Councilor Irish, you're not going to necessarily be able to remedy it right away. You're going to live with it for the duration of the project. A controllable, something that you can control and understand is probably a reasonable way to go. Just understanding it's a micro piece of a bigger question here. And it is a delicate ecosystem, I think. There's just a lot of stuff. Distance to the parking lots, though, that's your first remedy for this. You're looking for, we don't have to do anything with the streets. We've got hard surface that's not being utilized. Think about that, just from kind of an environmental perspective. This is wasted space. We already got a heat island in this thing in and of itself. Now we're going to put some cars there to kind of at least pay back some of that type of thing. So that would be your first area. I have a hunch, though. I think when you get in, when you draw all the heat maps down, you look at the areas where we might say have a shortage of parking now, you might find that with all the rules in place and all the things going on, it actually would be very difficult to implement a trial there without causing, back to the narrow streets, all this other type of stuff. And you might go right back to, we just got to try to just open up as many parking lots as we can and see how that goes. I mean, we talked about trying this in other areas, like we use the Oak Hill Park example. Now, Oak Hill Park, mostly single family homes, wide streets. Is there a need there? It's certainly not as great as it would be in some of the neighborhoods on the north side. Okay, would you do it there anyway, just to see what happens? Does it actually bring more cars? Does anybody care?
Yet that ward and precinct wasn't overwhelmingly against the ban. Like that's the shocking thing, is the places where you would think that the ban would be a who cares. There's discrepancy, there's variation across the city, but it's not like we can look and go, this is a precinct that is just dying to get rid of it.
That's very true. I mean, it's a little more so in some areas than others, but yeah, it's not like this, 99-1 type of thing. Most of the stuff is, low 50s, high 40s, mid 40s. So it's close. And you never, I say this as a former politician, you never know always why people are voting. A lot of times they're voting for something without fully, God help me pardon me for saying it this way. But it's not a big issue. You just say, well, you don't really think through all the nuance of it, and you just vote for it one way or the other.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's a valid vote, but it's just they're not going to get the reasons that you're looking for to say, why shouldn't we do this? Why shouldn't we do this? Because there really isn't much.
Hold on, I want to go to Councilor Wright. She has her hand up. Councilor Silver, did you want to say something? You can go
I
on.
can't remember what I
All right.
was going to say, so let's move on.
We're going to go on to Councilor Wright.
So personally, for the first year, I would only support a medical exemption for parking instead of a free for all in any neighborhoods. We can start with that. The problem is, and I don't know if we can get around it, is the enforcement of it. And if the police aren't going to enforce it, it's probably a union thing, is when do we get an outside contractor to do this?
Who's paying for the outside contractor?
Oh, they could have a percentage of the tickets.
So what?
This would go towards it, which.
Well, let's just say the ticket revenue would pay.
That's $75,000. I don't know if that's enough.
Yeah.
But
We added benefits.
yeah, I don't know. Is that all, Councilor Wright?
Yeah, but how are you going to enforce any of this if I mean, the police don't like to pick it as it is now, and now, there'll be more potential patrolling for tickets and, people who are doing it right and not. And one thing, and I didn't hear any discussion on this, whatever we do for the overnight parking ban, I like to see, parking on odd sides or even sides depending on the day. So you can go back and forth, because they do clean up some of the streets in the night. And like this year, one side of my street was 6 feet off the curb and the other side was 4 feet off the curb. And so if you had parking on both sides, it makes it so much more difficult in the winter. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just saying we're not voting on any ideas tonight.
Council Wright just made me think of an ancillary thing I just learned about today. So, the Newtonville train station. Okay, and thank God we are. So that's actually going to go. Right? They're actually going to do it. But
1 out of 3.
yeah, well, it's only been 30 some odd years.
Yeah.
But
When
whatever.
everything is built.
What? Well, to do that project is going to take several years.
Yeah.
And we're going to lose all those spaces on that part of Washington Street that face. They're going to shut that area
They
down.
got stage it on the pike.
Are they?
No.
I understood the parking space. I just learned this. So you also got to think about things like that. You don't want to go near there probably because you just lost 50 spaces, 60 spaces, 70 spaces that potentially you could have used. Because those angle spaces actually are, pretty prime stuff. So again, more to think about.
Yeah.
I feel like we're unloading on you here a little bit, but this has been real work. It's a complex topic.
You guys were supposed to solve the problem. not
Yeah,
ask for
yeah,
problems.
yeah.
It's recommendation,
Yeah.
well,
You haven't changed. You still love to talk in PS&T.
That hurts.
Yeah.
as part of the data collection, do
I
you
just-
collect data of existing on-street parking, like now, without, or, you know, where are the hotspots? Where do people park on the streets now, when there's no ban?
You mean like during the summer, overnight?
I'm just curious, 'cause then that would be, like, if there are pockets where people, that would be,
There was a study that the Yes Group did a while back. Okay, and again, you did go out and count cars
Yeah.
during outside the ban. It was outside the ban. It was only one time. You know, the scientific support for this, you gotta be careful. But, sorry?
Go ahead, we're joined by, Mr. Clates of the overnight parking ban.
But he had to do it, so you can explain.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. Just because it's our data, I'll clarify. So we actually went out, I believe, a total of 6 times during various parts of the 8 months, or various parts of the year during the 8 months when the ban is not in effect, and collected data of where cars are parked. We went to all 8 wards. Obviously, we didn't cover every street. We couldn't possibly do that. We didn't have enough on our team. But we did do that on 5 or 6 distinct nights, and we have pretty good data as to where people are parking when there's not the ban in effect. And I'd be happy to provide that.
Oh, you don't have it now?
I mean, I do. It's not in the paper.
Oh. I thought you had it all here.
Well,
I don't know.
data to know, like, you know, before, like, if there's a hotspot, people parking on the street now, so where there's more impact.
But that's not part of the heat maps.
No.
That data that you have, is it possible you could incorporate it into a heat map?
theoretically could be possible. Let me see what I can
Yeah,
do.
you can look, I don't know what it would tell you. You know, here's the thing with some of the data, like we've.
Oh, Hallie just gave us a
Yeah.
thumbs up.
Yeah, technically, you've got it digitized, so, you know, I think you have to be, this is not they're not dissuading anything, but you have to be careful when you look at some of the data to say, this is good data, I don't know what to do with it, you know, without being flipped.
Yeah.
But clearly cars were parked in certain areas overnight, in certain streets, I recall seeing numbers as high as 7, 8, 9 cars, could have been a long street, I don't know, but people do park. You know, when there's no ban, they do leave cars on the streets overnight.
Okay, Councilor Roach?
We have a vendor that could do this. So we have a vendor that we use, unfortunately, not as often as I would like, who does a full circuit of the 360 or so miles of the city using Google Map like cameras to assess road conditions. And they also do stuff above the road. So they're looking at the condition of sidewalks, they're looking at the condition of shrubs, I mean, the signs, etc. And I'm sure that that is something that they could do as and do that analysis. So that's something you could look into with DPW.
Could you send me some information on that, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Because I don't know much about that.
Could we have Mr. Clay?
Mr. Clay?
Just 2 other pieces of data that I'd be happy to provide the committee. It would be also usage of municipal parking lots. So we conducted several counts of folks who are using municipal parking lots. We have also the public records of who requested overnight permits. And then part of our second piece of data would also be part of our campaign strategy, as some of you may know, was to solicit signatures from cars parked overnight on the street. So we would leave little leaflets, and we got several responses from individuals whose cars were parked on the street overnight.
During the winter or non-winter months?
During the non-winter months.
Okay.
So I could also provide the data of where we got the most sort of, you know, signatures from folks who really felt so passionately that their car was parked on the street. They woke up with a sticker, with a pamphlet on their windshield, put a stamp on the pamphlet, mailed it back.
They were happy they didn't get it fixed.
Exactly. We happen to provide all of that.
Oh no, what's that under my windshield? Oh.
So that's good to know.
So yeah, we can make all that. And again, if we have stuff digitized, we can give it to you. Again, you have to, it's a couple of dates, but it does show that there are cars parked. What happens to those cars in the winter time is that some of them may actually go back into driveways. They're just on the street too. So this is a lot of ways to think about this kind of stuff. But at least it's one more thing to look at, factor in. That was through the slides. Daniel, I could keep going on.
Oh, we all could keep going on, but
well,
we don't want to be
if we got one thing across, that whole point really about you're in design, you still got to, whatever you do, you still have to build this. Yeah. When we did talk a little bit, and we weren't all together. We did this kind of via email, which is a terrible way to have discussions, but it's just because of proximity to this meeting. You could potentially stage this too. If the disability thing, whatever the solution there, I remember you talked about near term, long term in your April 8th meeting. Remember that. This would be something that, if it's successful, it would almost be a no-brainer, I think, to carry it forward, because you're addressing a community that, a cohort, a constituency that probably has true need. Got to figure out how to do it properly. Again, you have mechanism in place today, which is not codified, but is in practice, to go through the police, request the space, go through traffic council as necessary, and then get that space. So this would be broadening it out a little bit more. But something like that, you might want to work and say, we can at least get this done. If the other parts are just too hard, you could even, dare say, phase this in. Maybe January 15th is, that's release 2. Release 1 is take care of the first thing. Release 2 is January 15th, and you parse things. Maybe we're fortunate this year we don't get snow in December. No one really, is paying attention to this.
So I want to kind of rein this in now, but before I do, I want to say one thing. I want to thank the working group for the work that you did. Thank you for volunteering. Thank you for those heat maps. Thank you for those who worked on this report. I really do appreciate it. I'm sure everyone on the committee feels that too. Say something.
Well, I just wanted to add that the heat maps were great, and it would be great if we could get them slightly larger.
Yeah, I think we can do that. We can do that.
I think it just, not to say pictures 1,000 words, but it really, I think it opens up a level of understanding of the problem and opportunities in a way that words do. So.
Yeah, there's opportunity here. You have to figure it out, but we are data driven, and as I think you will be, and really that's the way you want to go forward with this, is being able to support your position. Again, people will agree and disagree. That's just the way it is. But at least if you can support the position you're taking and say, look, it's for these reasons we're doing this, and then vote for it yes, vote for it no, but have all the facts.
So again, I want to bring this in. We're not going to solve anything tonight. It was just to get an update from the working group. Do you the working group, have enough information to go forward from the committee to finish your work? What do you need from us? In 10 words or less.
And when were they supposed to deliver this to us?
So you're not, remember, I said you're not getting the Corinthian leather bound thing. You're going to get working process that says we talked about these topics, like the example of disability is a topic, general parking need is a topic. And we're going to say, these are the things that we think you could do. Maybe this is where you would do them. These are the things you're going to have to think about in order to implement this. And probably who else you might have to involve in order to get approved. Like, I don't think you can just push this through totally on your own. You're going to need support from legal. You're going to need support from the police, and you may need it from DPW and other departments. I don't know. But that's, so we'll do the best we can to basically tee this up so then you can take this discussion and take it further, decide if something you really want to put in front of your colleagues for a vote.
Well, we will have to do that eventually.
And a timeline, you didn't ask, so that's what you're saying, when you can be done.
Yeah, so that was like, when do you think?
Well, if you really want us to hit that kind of July 8th report date, which I think you're serious about, which we think you're serious about, excuse me, I just said we're gonna probably have to time box this thing and say, we need to be done in the next couple of weeks, by the end of the month, have enough time to pull a report together, whatever that deliverable looks like. And that will to some extent constrain what else we're able to do. I think you will get this is a flavor of what you're going to get. If this was substantive to you today, that's a good sign. If the information we gave you today is useful, it's something you can work with. We will add to this. We will make this more precise. But if this is useful to you, then in a couple of weeks you get something you can work with. But we're not going to say, as I said to you when we first talked about this, Councilor Lucas, we're not going to say open up parking on Com Ave.
No.
From 800 Com Ave to 1600 Com Ave and skip the firehouse, type of thing. We're not going to do that. We can't. It's not that we don't want to. It's just that we can't. We don't have the the horsepower.
That's fine.
So I'd like to suggest something that is categories of solutions, as well as the scale, but categories. Like
give an example of what a category is.
Category solution, medical exemption. Category solution, something a little broader, hardship need.
That's what I mean when I say topic.
Category.
That's exactly
Okay, and so just here are the topics. Here are the considerations by topic, and then we can look at those topics and say, this seems like a useful topic to pursue. This doesn't. This is consistent with the outcome of the vote. This is not, etc.
Mr. Halley, Mr. Fishman, does that make sense to you? You're in a room, so I'm asking you. Mike's got his hand up. You want to say something? I think that's reasonable, by the way. That is how I think we're trying to proceed. We want to give you at least that.
Yeah, and so I think that you can.
Oh, he has his hand up. He has his hand down, a thumb up, a thumb down. I don't know.
He's not on mute either.
He's saying illegal receiver downfield.
Okay, 10 yards.
I think, yes, good, thank you. I think that's reasonable. I just one question when you mentioned things that you could provide. I mean, one of the things that was an issue with the parking ban is that snow is only one little piece of it. I think someone mentioned we're going to have metrics. That you want to have metrics for whether this works or not. But the exact reason that we have the parking ban, you've heard maybe it's cars, keep cars off the street. Maybe it's not very well defined even why we have it. It's just sort of like it serves a bunch of purposes, maybe imperfectly. So I think only you will be able to figure out whether a trial succeeds or not. Like the metrics of did this succeed if we do a trial is probably going to be on you rather than us. And understanding those as we have our discussion, I think is probably very useful.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think another way to think about that is that they're offsetting in kind of goal theory, right? There's a goal and then there's an offsetting goal, right? We want to achieve this without doing this, right? You want to achieve in software, you want to achieve, much higher performance without a high number of bugs, right? So there's always an offsetting goal, and there's going to be, it is a multifaceted constituency for the parking ban, right? Some people, want emergency vehicle access during snow. Others are concerned about keeping cars off the street in general from a climate perspective, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think that we're going to be able to say, here's the one reason or the consensus set of reasons for the overnight parking ban. Some people like it because whatever it was intended to do, it has these good consequences. But you're absolutely right. That'll be on us to navigate those offsetting purposes.
You're going to have to do that. Again, that's in the implementation of it. But to your point, there's a lot of, it's unfortunate that it has that name right now, the overnight winter parking ban, because people immediately think of snow. And as everyone knows, it's way more than that. It has, because it's been institutionalized. It's created a lot of other things, which is basically keeping cars off the streets in some cases.
I want to go to Mr. Fishman, who has his hand up, part of the overnight parking ban working group and member of traffic council. And former
Thank you very much. I think the most difficult, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
So I think the most difficult part of the discussion, and we've had some very good input, the heat maps and so forth, is the geography question. And I heard one of the counselors say he wanted to maybe start with a smaller area. The hardship in areas such as, I don't know, north of Washington Street, Adams, in that area, you probably have a lot of houses with, one garage, maybe no garages, narrow driveways, streets maybe even narrower, certainly for both sides of the street. And one thought that has come up a little bit in the committee is trying to create an area where you actually have overlap. You have you have areas nearby where people within that area could park. Now, our chief guy says he doesn't like people parking in front of his house, and he put his car out there. And he said that a little bit in jest, but I'm sure people will feel that way. But such an area, if it's defined in the proper way, could be a successful trial. And the people who are in wider streets and they're part of that area, however it's defined, they would have to admit to the possibility that other people who don't live on their street are going to be parking there. That's number one. Number two, I think it's a conservative approach to take a smaller area and, you're testing out to see what happens. I was thinking on the political side, having a little experience on that if you just take a smaller area, say you did the north side of Washington Street, some area there would be a question, well, how about on the other side of Washington Street, the other side of Route 9, another part of town? So I think you basically have to come up with a couple of locations. Politically, I think it works better. Some people have talked about, one in each ward. I think that maybe is too big and, it'd be hard to test out and a lot of different assumptions. But I think politically, that may be, and maybe it's a phased in. Maybe you try one approach next year and then you add to it. Some people have said, I think Councilor Wright talked about the hardship perhaps of accessibility issues. Maybe that's the first year. But I think to have the trial really effective, it maybe has to extend over a couple of years and maybe involve more than one location in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. So again, I want to bring this back into committee. Before I do that, do you, the working group, have everything you need to go forward? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, I think we have what we
now
have.
chance to get quite
Without being split, I think we have. I think you, my impression, I'm speaking for myself, is that you're still turning this over.
Yeah.
I think we're going to move forward we're going to continue the work we have done on disability. We're going to finish that.
Yeah.
We'll close up this other area of hardship, not parking shortage, but other types of things that could come up. There's not a lot to say there, but we will address that. Again, Councilor Roach, that's what you're calling a category. We're calling it, using the term topic. And then we're into this much broader thing of general need, which right now seems to be focused on areas where there is a known shortage of parking relative to the availability of on-site parking. That's the best we have come up with yet. If you've got another switch on that would be helpful. You don't have to do, right this minute. I think you said what you can say, but if you've got another spin on that, we would love to hear that. And sooner the better, because we can work it in. I don't know that there is anything else. I think it's a very broad category, but that's again what we're actively working on. So, the kind of comment that Mr. Fishman made, that's already solutioning a bit, but that actually did come up. What if you got an area of need and you say, you know what, there's no way we can do it there. Streets are just too narrow, whatever. What if we just take the adjacent area that has opportunity there? Again, that has issues associated with it, but, we would not exclude that from the report. We would say you could consider this, and let you decide what
Okay.
the palatability of that is.
So can we pencil you in for July 8th? Not stop, but produce a report.
For now, let's aim for that.
Okay, for July 8th. Okay.
We're targeting that.
That's important because the parking ban goes into effect December 1st, as we all know. And we, the council, the committee, have to solicit feedback. I mean, I do want a dedicated meeting in September when people are back from the summer to have a public comment, kind of like what we did with the ICE item. We would have one dedicated meeting and take public comments, but in order to have that, we need to have a framework. We need to present something to the public. This is where we are. This is where we're probably going to end up. What do you think about it? In order to get to that, I'm working backwards. We need to work on it over the summer, which is something which I want to talk about, not in great length, but we're going to need to meet during the summer. Not every day, not every week, but we need to meet during the summer to take what the working group gives us and to come up with solutions for parking relief across the city. So I will be emailing the committee about availability during the summer. How does that sound to committee members?
I think that sounds appropriate to the problem.
Good, good. Oh, hand up, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to get back to this July 8th. I've thought about this only in the most abstract way, about the challenge that we're facing and the charge that you have. I'm a little worried that, we should put it more positively. I feel that your group is making some headway thinking through a lot of these things. But to force that thought process and translating that into some number of recommendations in 3 weeks from now? I mean, that feels like it's one thing to say. It's one thing to say.
4th of July.
Sure, it's one thing to say. Here's an area, the disability question that you raised. That you feel pretty good going ahead with this. And maybe there's one other thing that you feel pretty good. I'm making this up. One Parks Department lot that's near one of these, add another municipal lot to the options that people have. We're not really changing anything fundamentally, but we want to make incremental progress on this. I could see you getting that far, but no farther. And we can try and wrestle with the same questions that you're wrestling with and take it farther and have the framework that you're talking about in September to the public, or we can sort of rein in our ambitions here and make it more manageable and maybe therefore more doable, so that we could actually get a couple of things implemented, but not a system-wide change, which feels more and more like something we've got to really think through hard before we do that. And I'm even thinking this geographical trial, wow, even that's more complicated than I first thought.
Absolutely. I'm speaking. I'm sorry, Sharon. it's really your thing, but, yeah, it's complex.
Yeah.
The further you get into it, the more you see.
That's why it needs to be simple.
I personally would be content with a report 3 weeks from now that said, this is where your group has found consensus on these things. And we haven't, because we either can't agree, or we haven't had the time, or it's too complex. We need think it through harder. We need some data somehow, and either you get your mandate extended, maybe, or you just have to come back to it later, and that you're not going to be able to get to it in 3 weeks. That's just me talking.
I think that, well, I've talked to several members of the group about this. I think we're available to work with you beyond July 8th. Okay, so I think everyone has enough skin in this now that they're not going to say, no, I already did. We told you what we told you. You go, this is your job to do. I don't think we have a deaf ear to that. But I think you need to keep the thing moving forward. There's some, because you want that December 1st deadline, you're going to have to make some compromises. It's a tight time frame. We started doing our work in the middle of May.
Yeah.
And, given the summer and how many times you can meet, again, we're meeting every week. You're not doing that,
We can. I'm not going anywhere.
That's on you, but seriously, that's the kind of work it took. And we had to get started. First meeting was just introducing, having the ceremony, coin toss, national anthem, all that kind of stuff, introducing everybody. But we framed up kind of what the schedule and work plan would be in that first meeting, and then ever since then, it's been kind of nose to the grindstone. Let's talk about this stuff. And I guess I look at sometimes what is coming up in these conversations that we haven't thought about before, like some de novo concept. And lately, not so much. Now, I think what we're doing now is we kind of got our arms around what this thing is, and now we're beating it up. We're saying, let's figure out how we actually, we're not going to give you a final implementation roadmap, but these are the things I think you're going to have to deal with in order to do this if you decide to do it. So I appreciate and the group appreciates that, because, everybody, they all have schedules to do too, and getting us together every week has not been easy. But generally speaking, we've had everybody there, maybe one miss here and there, so it's been pretty good attendance. But we're just going to work towards that deadline. But if you want to extend it, we're kind of working under your charge. So.
All right, Councilor Roach.
I hear from the working group that July 8th is still a reasonable goal. And so I think that I'd like a motion to hold and a motion to thank folks.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. You want to join me in thanking the working group?
Yeah.
All right, yes.
Motion to hold.
Okay. I just want to make sure I cover everything here. So summer schedule, I'm going to send out an email asking for everyone's dates that you cannot be at, and I'll try to schedule a meeting or two or multiple during the summer being July and August.
Labor Day is late this year.
July 7th.
School starts before Labor Day this year.
September 7th. Yeah, but this is just July and August. After July 8th, obviously. So I'm not gonna see you all again until after July 8th. So first of all, happy America 250. Don't want to get that out the way. And Councilor Roach made a motion to hold. Any further discussion before we say goodnight?
Well, he had to make sure 2 motions. We can't do the second one if he proposes the first one, so.
We get one of the second one, and they know the sentence.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
Yeah, we have to do the thing.
I'm not sure that warrants some.
Okay, well, I'm just saying,
Okay. It is implied. So motion to hold from Councilor Roach on item
6226.
6226. I can't even find my agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 8-0.
7-0.
7-0. That's our last item for the evening. We are adjourned at 9:01. Good night.
Good work, everybody.